Hello. Welcome to Global English Stories. Today we will journey through the life of one of the most inspiring figures in American history, Abraham Lincoln. Known for his wisdom, kindness, and determination, Lincoln led the United States through one of its most difficult times. From his humble beginnings to becoming the 16th president, his story is a powerful lesson in courage and leadership. Let's explore his life and learn valuable lessons that still resonate today.
Part 1. The Boy from the Log Cabin. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in the woods of Hardin County, Kentucky, USA. His family was very poor. They lived in a one-room wooden house with no windows and a dirt floor. There was no electricity, no bathroom, and no soft bed to sleep in. His father, Thomas Lincoln, worked hard as a farmer and carpenter, but money was always a problem. Abraham's mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was a gentle and loving woman. She taught Abraham to be kind and honest. She also helped him learn to read and write. Sadly, when Abraham was just 9 years old, his mother died from a sickness called milk sickness, which came from drinking milk from cows that ate poisonous plants. Her death hurt Abraham deeply. He felt lost and alone. A year later, his father remarried. His new wife, Sarah Bush Johnston, brought 3 children of her own into the home. She was kind and loving to Abraham and his sister, Sarah. She brought new energy and books into the house. Sarah encouraged Abraham to read and study. She saw that he was smart and curious. Even though Abraham didn't go to school often, maybe only a few months total in his entire life, he loved learning. He would borrow books from neighbors and read them many times. He read the Bible, Aesop's Fables, Robinson Crusoe, and anything he could find. Sometimes he would walk miles just to borrow a book. He read by firelight at night, using with chips or pieces of coal to make notes on wooden boards when he had no paper. Life on the farm was not easy. Abraham had to work hard every day. He helped plant corn, chop wood, carry water, and take care of animals. He was tall and strong for his age. People said he was quiet, but always respectful and thoughtful. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. He liked to tell stories and jokes, and others enjoyed being around him. As he grew older, Abraham began to dream of doing more than just farm work. He wanted to use his mind, not just his hands. He watched the world around him and asked big questions. Why were some people rich and others poor? Why did some people get to go to school and others didn't? Why were some people treated badly just because of the color of their skin? These questions stayed in his heart. Abraham Lincoln believed that every person should have a fair chance in life. He believed that working hard and being honest could help anyone succeed. He also learned something very important from his stepmother in books. Words have power. With the right words, you can inspire people, change opinions, and even lead a nation. In 1816, when Abraham was 7 years old, his family moved to Indiana. They settled in a new area with more land and better opportunities. Still, life continued to be hard. Winters were cold, and there were many dangers like wild animals and disease. But Abraham kept reading and learning. He was growing in both body and mind. When he was 21 years old, Abraham left home to build his own life. He moved to a small village in Illinois called New Salem. There, he did many different jobs. He worked as a store clerk, a rail splitter, cutting logs for fences, and even a postman. He was good at every job because he worked hard and stayed honest. People in New Salem liked Abraham. They said he was a good listener, full of good sense, and always fair. He didn't drink alcohol or gamble. He helped neighbors without asking for anything in return. Because of this, people began to call him Honest Abe. He earned this name with his actions. One time, a woman gave him too much money by mistake at his store. Later that night, Abraham walked several miles to return the extra money. Another time, he helped a pig stuck in the mud, even though he was wearing clean clothes and had other things to do. These small acts showed the kind of man he was. Abraham's early life was full of pain, hard work, and simple joys. He didn't have much, but he had dreams, a strong mind, and a kind heart. He grew up with no money, little schooling, and many losses, but he kept going. He believed in himself and the goodness of others. This is the beginning of the story of Abraham Lincoln, the poor boy from a log cabin who would one day become the President of the United States. But his journey was just getting started. Part 2. From Worker to Lawyer. After leaving his family's home, Abraham Lincoln began a new life in a small village called New Salem in Illinois. He was 21 years old, tall and thin, with a strong body and a kind smile. He wore simple clothes and had very few belongings. But he carried something special, his love of learning and his deep sense of right and wrong. In New Salem, Abraham worked many different jobs. He helped build fences, chopped wood, worked at a general store, and later became a postmaster. People in the village quickly saw that he was honest and hardworking. If he said he would do something, he did it. If he made a mistake, he admitted it and tried to fix it. Abraham also had a great memory and loved to read. In the back of the store, during quiet hours, he would open books and teach himself grammar, math, and law. He borrowed books from friends and neighbors and studied every page with care. He wanted to learn how to speak well, how to write clearly, and how to understand the rules that shaped society. In 1832, he decided to try something new. He ran for a seat in the Illinois state government, called the General Assembly. He gave speeches and met people, sharing his ideas about roads, schools, and fair laws. He did not win the election that year, but he didn't give up. Shortly after that, he joined the local militia to fight in a small war against Native American leader Black Hawk. Although he didn't see much fighting, his bravery and leadership impressed others. After the war, he returned to New Salem and tried running for office again. This time, in 1834, he won. Abraham Lincoln became a member of the Illinois House of Representatives. As a young lawmaker, Abraham listened more than he spoke. He learned how the government worked. He believed in simple, honest leadership. He voted for things that would help poor families like his own, better roads, fair taxes, and schools for children. During this time, Abraham also made a big decision. He wanted to become a lawyer. He could not afford to go to law school, so he did what he always did. He taught himself. He read legal books day and night. He studied famous cases and wrote notes in the margins. After years of hard study, he passed the bar exam in 1836 and became a lawyer. He moved to Springfield, the capital of Illinois, and opened a small law office. As a lawyer, Abraham helped farmers, shopkeepers, and workers. He believed that everyone deserved a fair trial, rich or poor. In court, he spoke clearly and used simple words that everyone could understand. He did not try to impress people with big language. He just told the truth. Lincoln soon became one of the best-known lawyers in the state. He traveled from town to town on horseback, visiting small courts in the countryside. He earned respect because he treated people kindly and worked hard to win cases. He became known for telling powerful stories that helped juries understand difficult ideas. In Springfield, something else important happened. Abraham met a woman named Mary Todd. She was educated, clever, and strong-minded. They were very different, but they both cared about justice and politics. After a few years of friendship and some breakups, they finally got married in 1842. The couple would go on to have 4 sons, but only one, Robert, lived to adulthood. The family suffered many personal losses, but Abraham and Mary tried to stay strong. Now, a successful lawyer and a family man, Abraham also kept working in politics. He joined a new political party called the Whig Party, which wanted to build a stronger country through better roads, education, and a national economy. In 1846, he was elected to the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. There, he spoke out against the war with Mexico and also began to talk more about something that deeply bothered him: slavery. Lincoln believed that slavery was wrong. He thought every person had the right to be free and live with dignity. His voice was still small in the big world of politics, but it was growing stronger. After his term in Congress, Abraham returned to Illinois and focused on his law career. But he could not stay away from politics for long. The question of slavery was becoming more serious across America, and Abraham knew that he had to be part of the conversation. He had come far from the log cabin of his childhood. He had become a respected lawyer, a public servant, and a man with a growing voice. But his greatest challenges and his greatest achievements were still to come. Part 3. The road to the presidency. By the 1850s, America was changing quickly and not always peacefully. The country was growing, with new lands becoming states. But there was a serious problem dividing people: slavery. In the South, many people believed it was okay to own slaves. In the North, more and more people believed slavery was wrong. Abraham Lincoln was one of them. After finishing his time in Congress, Lincoln returned to Illinois and focused on his work as a lawyer. But as the debate over slavery grew louder, he could not stay silent. In 1854, Congress passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This law allowed people in new states to decide for themselves whether they wanted slavery. Lincoln was deeply upset. He believed slavery should not grow into new areas. He felt the law was dangerous and unfair. Lincoln returned to politics. He gave powerful speeches that made people stop and think. He didn't shout or use angry words. Instead, he used logic and honesty. He explained why slavery was morally wrong and why America could not continue divided. He said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." These words became famous. He meant that the country could not survive forever if half allowed slavery and the other half did not. In 1858, Lincoln ran for the U.S. Senate against a well-known man named Stephen A. Douglas. Their race became famous because of the debates they held. The Lincoln-Douglas debates took place in towns across Illinois. Thousands of people came to listen. In each debate, one man would speak, then the other would answer. Lincoln spoke with compassion. He said, "I hate slavery because it robs a man of his labor." Although Lincoln lost the Senate race, the debates made him famous across the country. Newspapers printed his speeches, and people from other states began to see him as a man of wisdom and courage. He did not come from a rich family or a big city. He was a man of the people, and many Americans respected that. In 1860, something surprising happened. The newly formed Republican Party chose Abraham Lincoln as their candidate for President of the United States. He was not the biggest name in politics, but he had something special. He was honest. He was thoughtful. He had a powerful story, from log cabin to lawyer to leader, and he believed in freedom and unity. The country was full of tension during the election. Southern states warned that if Lincoln won, they might leave the United States. They believed he would try to end slavery everywhere. But Lincoln had always said he only wanted to stop slavery from spreading, not to end it where it already existed. Still, many people in the South didn't trust him. When Lincoln won the election in November 1860, some southern states began to break away. They said they no longer wanted to be part of the United States. They formed a new group called the Confederate States of America. Lincoln was deeply worried. He wanted to keep the country together. He believed the United States was stronger when united. He also believed that democracy, the right of people to choose their leaders, must be protected. He worked carefully as he prepared to take office, hoping to avoid war. On March 4th, 1861, Abraham Lincoln became the 16th President of the United States. He gave his first inaugural address in Washington, D.C. In his speech, he spoke directly to the South. He said he had no desire to harm them or take away their rights. But he also said the Union must be saved. He ended his speech with hope, saying, "We are not enemies, but friends. The better angels of our nature could still bring peace." But just a few weeks later, on April 12, 1861, the first shots of the Civil War were fired. The war Lincoln had tried to prevent had begun. It would become one of the darkest and deadliest times in American history. Lincoln was now in the middle of the storm. He was the leader of a divided country. Half the nation had turned against the government. People were dying on the battlefield. He had to find a way to save the Union while staying true to his beliefs. Through it all, Lincoln stayed calm. He read letters from soldiers and families. He met with generals. He studied books on war, and he prayed. He was not a perfect man, and he knew the job ahead of him would be full of pain. But he also believed that the future of America depended on the choices he made. From the plains of Illinois to the White House in Washington, Abraham Lincoln's journey was far from over. The real test of his leadership was just beginning. The Civil War had started, and the fate of the nation rested on his shoulders. Part 4. Leading Through War. When Abraham Lincoln became president in 1861, the country was falling apart. 11 southern states had left the Union to form their own country, called the Confederate States of America. They wanted to keep slavery and live by their own rules. Lincoln wanted to keep the United States together. He believed that America must be one nation, not two. The Civil War had started. It was a war between the North, Union, and the South, Confederacy. Families were divided. Brothers fought against brothers. Towns and farms were destroyed. Thousands of people were dying. It was a time of great fear and sadness. Lincoln had never led an army. He had never been a general. But now, as president, he was in charge of the biggest war in American history. He read books about war and strategy. He asked questions. He talked to his generals. He spent many nights in his office, tired and worried, writing letters to soldiers' families and thinking about how to win the war. In the beginning, the war did not go well for the North. The South's army was strong and full of spirit. They won many battles. Lincoln changed generals many times, hoping to find the right one who could lead the Union Army to victory. People began to criticize him. Some said he was too slow. Others said he should give up and let the South go. But Lincoln stayed strong. He believed that the war was not only about saving the country. It was also about ending slavery. At first, Lincoln had only wanted to stop slavery from spreading. But as the war continued, he saw that true peace would only come when slavery was gone. In 1862, he made a bold decision. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, a powerful document that said all slaves in the Confederate States would be free. On January 1st, 1863, he signed it. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free every slave in the country right away, but it changed the purpose of the war. Now, the North was not just fighting to save the Union. It was fighting to end slavery too. The news of the proclamation spread quickly. It gave hope to millions of enslaved people. Many African Americans joined the Union Army and fought bravely. Around 180,000 black soldiers served in the war, and many gave their lives for freedom. Lincoln also worked hard to keep the country united. Some states in the North did not agree with everything he did. Some people protested and said the war should stop. But Lincoln used patience and clear words to explain why the fight was important. He believed that democracy, the idea that people can choose their leaders, must survive. In 1863, a terrible battle took place in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It was one of the bloodiest battles in American history. More than 50,000 soldiers were killed or wounded in just 3 days. The Union Army won, but the cost was high. A few months later, Lincoln visited the battlefield and gave a short but powerful speech. It was only about 2 minutes long, but it became one of the most famous speeches in American history, the Gettysburg Address. In it, Lincoln said that the war was a test to see if a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal could survive. He ended the speech by saying that the soldiers who died at Gettysburg should not die in vain. He said, "Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." These words reminded Americans why they were fighting, not for power or land, but for freedom and equality. Even during the war, Lincoln never forgot the everyday people. He visited soldiers in hospitals. He talked with farmers, workers, and mothers who had lost sons in the war. He answered letters with kindness and stayed close to the people who trusted him. Many called him Father Abraham. The war continued into 1864. People were tired of fighting. Many wondered if Lincoln should stay president, but he stayed focused. He believed that giving up would mean the death of the Union. In November 1864, the people voted. Lincoln was reelected. It showed that most Americans still believed in him and his vision. He chose Andrew Johnson, a Southern Democrat who stayed loyal to the Union, as his new vice president. Lincoln hoped this would help heal the country after the war. He spoke of peace and forgiveness. He said, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." These words showed his hope to rebuild the nation with kindness, not hate. By early 1865, The Union Army was winning the war. The South was growing weak. Lincoln started planning for the future. He dreamed of rebuilding the country where all people could be free and live together in peace. But even as the war neared its end, danger was still close. Not everyone supported Lincoln. Some people were angry at the changes he made. They did not want slavery to end. They did not want the country to change. Abraham Lincoln had led the country through its darkest days. He had saved the Union and taken the first big step toward ending slavery. But his journey was not over yet. Part 5. The Final Days and the Great Loss. By early 1865, the American Civil War was nearly over. The Union Army, led by General Ulysses S. Grant, had pushed the Confederate Army back. Many cities in the South had fallen. The people were tired. There had been too much death, too much pain. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, could see the end of the war coming. But he did not feel joy. He felt sorrow for all who had suffered. He knew that peace would not come easily. The country was broken, and now the hard work of rebuilding had to begin. In March 1865, Lincoln gave his second inaugural address. It was a short speech, but it carried great meaning. The war was still happening, but Lincoln spoke of healing, not revenge. He said the North and South had both suffered, and both needed to move forward together. One of the most famous lines from his speech was, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." He meant that no one should hold hatred in their hearts. Instead, people should forgive and help one another. It was time to rebuild the country with kindness and hope. Just weeks later, on April 9th, 1865, the war finally ended. General Hobart Lee, the leader of the Confederate Army, surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. People all over the North celebrated. The Union had been saved. Lincoln, however, remained calm. He knew that ending the war was only the first step. The South was in ruins. Many people had no homes, no food, and no future. Slavery was ending, but freedom alone would not be enough. Former slaves needed help to build new lives. Lincoln wanted to bring the South back into the Union without punishment. He wanted to forgive, not fight. Some of his own supporters disagreed. They wanted to punish the South for starting the war. But Lincoln believed in mercy. He said, "Let us strive on to finish the work we are in." He began working on plans to reunite the country. He supported the 13th Amendment, which would officially end slavery in the United States. It passed through Congress and was on its way to becoming law. Lincoln had achieved one of his greatest dreams, the end of slavery. Then, something terrible happened. On April 14th, 1865, just 5 days after the war ended, Abraham Lincoln went to see a play at Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. He was happy and relaxed. He brought his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, and some friends. They sat in a special balcony box to watch the play. During the play, a man named John Wilkes Booth, an actor and a supporter of the South, entered the balcony quietly. He stepped behind Lincoln and shot him in the back of the head. The audience heard the gunshot and began to panic. Booth jumped from the balcony to the stage and shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," a Latin phrase meaning, "Thus always to tyrants." Then he ran away. Doctors rushed to help Lincoln. He was taken to a nearby house across the street from the theater. He never woke up. The next morning, on April 15th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln died. He was 56 years old. The news shocked the nation. People cried in the streets. Shops closed. Beds hung. Flags were lowered. It felt like the whole country had lost a father. Even people in the South were sad. The man who had tried to bring peace and forgiveness was gone. Lincoln's body was placed in a special train that traveled from Washington, D.C. to his home in Springfield, Illinois. At every stop, thousands of people came to see him and say goodbye. They left flowers and wept in silence. His funeral train was called the Lincoln Special. He was buried in Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield, where he had lived most of his life. A great tomb was later built there in his honor. Abraham Lincoln's death changed America forever. People remembered his honesty, his wisdom, and his great heart. He had led the country through its darkest time and given his life for its future. Even today, Lincoln is one of the most loved and respected presidents in history. His words are still quoted. His face is on the penny and the $5 bill, and his statue sits inside the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., where people from all over the world come to visit. Lincoln once said, "The best way to predict your future is to create it." He created a future where freedom could grow, where people could live equally, and where the United States stayed united. His journey, from a log cabin in Kentucky to the White House in Washington, is a story of hope, courage, and belief. He showed the world that one person, no matter how poor or unknown, can change history. Part 6. Lincoln's Legacy and Lessons. After Abraham Lincoln's death in April 1865, the United States entered a new chapter. The war was over, slavery was ending, and the country was beginning to rebuild. But without Lincoln, the road ahead felt uncertain. He had been a strong and steady guide during the nation's darkest days. Now, America had to carry on without him. Lincoln left behind more than just memories. He left ideas, big, powerful ideas about freedom, equality, and democracy. He believed that every person mattered, no matter their color, class, or background. He believed that a country built on liberty and justice could last if its people worked together. One of his greatest achievements was helping to end slavery in the United States. The 13th Amendment, which officially made slavery illegal, was passed in Congress before his death and became law in December 1865. It changed the lives of millions of African Americans. Though their struggles were far from over, freedom had begun, thanks to Lincoln's leadership and courage. But Lincoln's work was not just about ending slavery. He helped save the Union, the idea that all states must stay together as one country. During the Civil War, many feared the nation would break into two forever. Lincoln believed that a united America was stronger and more hopeful. He fought with words and wisdom, and when needed, with war, to keep the country together. After the war, a period called Reconstruction began. The South was badly damaged. Cities were destroyed, farms were burned, and families were broken. The government tried to rebuild these states and help newly freed African Americans start their lives. Lincoln had wanted this to be a time of healing. Sadly, because he was no longer there, the process became much harder and more painful than he had hoped. Though Lincoln did not live to see the full results of his efforts, his spirit continued to guide the nation. Leaders, teachers, and everyday people looked to his words and actions for inspiration. His ideas helped shape the next steps in the fight for civil rights. Over time, Lincoln became a symbol of honesty, strength, and unity. He was often called Honest Abe, not just for his truthfulness, but for his fairness and deep moral sense. He listened to people, even those who disagreed with him. He tried to understand their pain and gave them hope with his calm and thoughtful voice. In 1922, the Lincoln Memorial was built in Washington, D.C. Inside sits a large statue of Abraham Lincoln, looking serious and wise. On the walls around him are his famous words from the Gettysburg Address and his second inaugural address. Visitors from all over the world come to read his speeches and learn about his life. His words live on in schools, books, movies, and songs. Generations of children have learned about his journey, from a small log cabin to the White House. His life story teaches that even someone born in poverty can grow up to do great things. Lincoln's legacy also helped inspire future leaders. One of the most important was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963. King spoke of equality, freedom, and justice, many of the same values that Lincoln had lived and died for. Even today, Abraham Lincoln remains a guiding light. People talk about Lincoln-like qualities when they describe leaders who are honest, humble, and brave. Presidents and world leaders often visit his memorial to reflect on his wisdom. What lessons can we learn from Lincoln? First, that leadership is about serving others. Lincoln did not lead for power or fame. He led because he cared deeply about his country and its people. He wanted everyone to have a better future. Second, that words can change the world. Lincoln's speeches were not long or loud, but they were clear, strong, and full of heart. His Gettysburg Address was only about 270 words, yet it still moves people today. Third, that kindness and forgiveness are stronger than hate. Even in the middle of war, Lincoln spoke of healing. He wanted to bring people together, not tear them apart. Finally, that we must never give up on our beliefs. Lincoln faced great pain, defeat, and pressure. Many times, people told him to quit, but he stayed true to his vision of freedom and unity. Because of that, the United States stayed whole, and millions of people were set free. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The better part of one's life consists of his friendships." He believed in people. He believed in the power of kindness, courage, and hope. And he believed that every person could make a difference. His life was not easy. His journey was full of hardship, sadness, and struggle. But he never let those things stop him. Instead, he turned pain into purpose and became one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known. That's the end of this 6-part English learning story about Abraham Lincoln, a man of simple roots, great vision, and a heart full of hope. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep learning, keep growing, and one story at a time.